Welcome back, brothers and sisters. In this video, I'm going to walk you through this 8-room dungeon that I prepped, the Hall of Fallen Heroes. I'm going to tell you what is in all of the rooms so that you can run it at your own table, but more importantly, I'm going to also tell you what I was thinking when I prepped these rooms, like the world building that led to the decisions, and what I intentionally did not include in the prep, so that when I'm at the table and my players are throwing crazy things at me and coming up with their own theories, I could adjust to whatever I needed in the moment to tell a cool story, instead of feeling like I needed to flip through a big PDF on exactly what the answer to that question was for this exact room in the dungeon, right? Because I think that's a major roadblock that can hurt a lot of DMs, especially new DMs, of feeling like you have to just get everything right straight out of the gate. Two quick things before we start though. Don't forget to leave a like and pay your hobby tithing. And also everything I'm going to be showing off today, the maps, the minis, the terrain, the prep, it's all on the church's Patreon at that $3 tier, so you can go snag that. And now, let us pray. So the Hall of Fallen Heroes was a crypt designed with two purposes behind it, and it was built by the Crypt Maidens, this order of caretaker nuns who, of course, mysteriously vanished long ago, so that it's now abandoned for your characters to explore, right? But it was built to congregate heroes, to call martyrs into this dungeon so that they could serve the whims of the church, and then when those martyrs perished in their quests on their missions, they would be entombed either here in the crypts in Area 2 or in the Hall of Martyrs, Area 5, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So let's start here with Area 1, the Indoctrination Shrine. This shrine depicts Vecna, or the church, or the Ark. All of those are kind of interchangeable, at least in my campaign setting. The world is called the Ark. It is the arcane repopulation craft, this planet-sized cathedral that is drifting through space, through the heavens, to deliver mortals to the new world after the old world was destroyed in some doomsday apocalypse, right? And Vecna is this AI that was built to pilot the Ark, to operate it, to keep it running, but over the ages, he has slowly deteriorated. His codes have kind of become corrupt or splintered off and replicated, and those are all the other gods that people worship. But Vecna is the Ark, which is the church, like the clergy who kind of aided him in running it. But it has been so long since he was created that now he's sort of drifted into this thing of myth and has become more of a fantasy deity, right? So that is him here in this sort of T-pose shrine, and in his right hand, he's catching a fallen angel or a fallen martyr, kind of bringing it into the embrace of the church. You can see all the spires and things coming up off of his head, this central unblinking eye. And then in his left hand, he's holding a dead dove with gold chains and pearls falling out of it. It's meant to symbolize, like, yes, the church takes in their heroes, but they use them for their own purposes, their own means, and even in death, their riches and treasures and knowledge will be plundered, which, ironically, is kind of what your players will probably do in this dungeon in the next room. But to make this room something that isn't just a statue with some world building behind it, I added that pilgrims and the people who now come to this dungeon to use it to call heroes to their aid will leave offerings of rations or supplies like adventuring gear. They might leave weapons and armor or lesser relics like a potion of healing or something at the base of this indoctrination shrine, in the hopes that when the heroes who have been called show up, they not only are equipped to do the mission they have been called to serve, but also that by giving them something, it kind of plays into that indoctrination idea of like, we are giving you this so you can serve us, and the players will be able to kind of loot this treasure and get some little minor things to help them in their very first adventure. And then when they meet the people who have left that for them there, they can fall to their knees, prostrate themselves. Our prayers have been answered. The heroes are here. And then your characters will kind of have to figure out like how they want to navigate that. Like, are they willing to continue serving the church? Are they going to continue being this this group of martyred heroes that they have apparently been called to be? Or are they going to go against the whims of the church and try and be their own thing? Again, that is very focused on my setting, but the idea is when your heroes show up for the very first adventure, there is already a little bit of free loot for them to divvy out. And maybe that is even just where they get their starting gear. Like, this is just where it is. And that's all that's left for them. But lots of fun to be had here, I think. The next room is the Martyred Crypts. This is where fallen heroes were entombed by the Crypt Maidens with their secrets and treasures in hand. So you've got 8 different sarcophagi that the players can open and plunder, but they are, of course, warded. And the way that these work is, you can see there is this pyramid-like spire on the top of each sarcophagus with the unblinking eye of Vecna, or the church, kind of watching over the remains. And as long as that eye is uncovered and unharmed, if the lid is removed, it can open and animate the skeleton so that the martyr can defend their riches that they were buried with. So in my headcanon, I think either there's like some sort of thin sheet of lead that is kind of hidden up in the recesses of this sarcophagi that the Crypt Maidens knew to pull down, and your players could discover that to cover the eye so that they could safely open it, or maybe they just need to shatter whatever magical gemstone has been set into the sarcophagus. But if the lid is removed and the eye is still open, there will be a fight with some skeletons, potentially 8 of them. But the idea I think here is, or what I hope happens is, a group of kind of new players will open the first one without really doing any sort of cautionary investigation, fight a skeleton. They'll think, okay, maybe this next time around we should be a little more cautious. They'll do some investigation checks on the eye, maybe like test the theory. And then once they've kind of figured it out, then the rest of these sarcophagi should be pretty open or easy for them to open and plunder, so that they're not needing to do 8 different combats with 8 different skeletons that have been animated. That would be quite a slog. And then the next room is the Procession Hall. This is where the remains of the martyrs, when they were being brought into the sarcophagi, would pass through, and they would move between these 2 idols depicting these giant eyes. Now, those are not necessarily the eyes of Vecna. They are the eyes of the god or gods which this martyr worshipped, and they are there to pass judgment on their soul in their final moments before their body is put to rest, and they are either accepted into the heavens or damned to the hells. And I have a little note in the PDF for this that the living who move through this room are judged even harsher than the dead. And so the Crypt Maidens, I imagine, wore some sort of helmet, or maybe they even like had to have their eyes blinded when they passed through this room so that they would not be smited by the gods. They would be able to pass through without too harsh of a judgment. But your characters, unless they maybe find like a maiden's corpse up in here and one of those helmets or something to put on, they're going to have to figure out a way to pass through this room without being smitten by their god. And I could see maybe there's like a secret lever that if they pull it, just like the sarcophagi, like it brings a lead sheet down over these eyes, or maybe you just have to pass through with your eyes closed and just hope that you find your way through without triggering a pressure plate trap or something. But this room is really just here to be an obvious puzzle trap. When the door opens, at least my group, when I ran this, they're like, okay, obviously something's going to happen with these eyes if we don't figure it out. And their plan ended up just being shove the tank in there and let him eat the damage, and then we'll go from there. Area 4 is the Organ Sanctum. This is where the Crypt Maidens would harvest and disembowel the fallen martyrs and put their blessed, craniums, their brains, their cerebral fluid, their heart, their blood, their whatever, in cryopods or in urns or something to preserve it. Now, yes, it's just kind of like when a mummy is entombed, they do this to respect and prepare the body for their burial, but the Crypt Maidens had another secret reason why they needed to stockpile organs, and I will reveal that in a future room here, so just keep that in the back of your mind, that when the players enter here, they'll find just dozens and dozens of urns lining the walls on the shelves and things, maybe the bones of martyrs and things like that are also preserved. If you've seen those relics from like the Catholic Church, there's like a hand bone in a glass jar, right? It's kind of like that. And this is also a place where maybe there are some healing potions. When my players were passing through here, they'd already fought some skeletons. They'd been smited by the gods. They needed a little bit of healing. So I just said, hey, you find 1d4 vials of martyr's blood mixed with holy water, and those just function as a potion of healing. And then this could be whatever hazard you want. Mine, it was just water. So if the players tried to move through here, it was a little loud and kind of splashed around if they didn't make a stealth check. And that alerted the monsters that I had hiding further on in the dungeon. But yeah, that's the Organ Sanctum. A quick side note here before we move to Area 5. I want to talk about this offshoot hallway because there's 2 little notes here to make. One is, in my setting, because it's the Ark, it's a huge mega cathedral dungeon, this is to, like every dungeon I generate, I just make sure it has at least one side offshoot with some stairways or a door, because I want to be able to modularly connect all of these smaller dungeons that I'm designing to eventually build out this huge mega dungeon map. But in your world, which probably isn't the Ark, right? You could just have this lead up into the temple, or it is the secret backdoor entrance that you get in. You can enter here through the graveyard out behind the temple or something like that. But I'm sure you've all heard that advice already of have multiple ways in and out of the dungeon. That's just what this can be. Or if you just want to keep it simple, it just leads down deeper into further crypts. Back to the dungeon. Area 5, the Martyr Hall, is the coolest area of this dungeon, I think. You can see that instead of sarcophagi, there are 6 idols that have been built in the likeness of some of the Crypt Maidens' most revered or renowned martyrs, ones who the knowledge they possessed, it was just simply too invaluable to just seal them in a sarcophagus, never to be heard from again. Instead, they sealed their consciousness inside these idols. Maybe they trapped their soul inside, or because my world is sort of a mash between sci-fi and fantasy, maybe they copied their brain code or something so that it's not like an actual living sentient soul inside that experiences things. It's more just like talking to a programmed version of this martyr. But the idea is you can go up to any of these and they propose a challenge to you. And if you fulfill that challenge then and prove yourself worthy of their blessings, they will reward you with something. And each of them is kind of meant to stand in for one of the major classes or something adjacent, like barbarian, paladin, alchemist, rogue, cleric, and sorcerer or necromancer or something. And so like the barbarian, the challenge in the notes is if you bring them the severed feet of a giant who has crushed the innocent, you are blessed with the inability to be moved from a space that you are standing in. You are just steadfast in your faith and devotion. Not even teleportation can move you unless you want to be moved. So great chance for some side quests and things like that, or even like mentor type characters for your characters as they level up. Area 6 here is just kind of like a foyer if you want it to be like an entry hall. I call it the Prophet's Stair. You've got the left and right eye of Vecna, and the note I have is that Vecna will not allow those who have not proved their devotion to ascend beyond this place. So in my setting, that probably means like you have to at least have maybe done one of these challenges before you can advance up, or a Crypt Maiden needs to give you their blessing for you to move further up. Or maybe you can just risk it, right? You just try and dash through these eyes, and if you fail a dex save or a whiz save or something, you're blinded for a while, or you get hit with a disintegration ray. That would be pretty harsh. But really, this could just be a simple, just a foyer where your characters can either go down into this room or further up. What I'm trying to say here is not every single room has to have some crazy big thing that happens in it. It's sometimes fine for your players to just have a space to catch their breath and think back on and talk amongst themselves about like, holy shit, like what did we just go through? That was crazy. All right, let's move on. That's totally fine. We're getting close to the end of the dungeon. Chamber 7 is the Deliverance Shrine. You can see here that it's like got an angel with these big horns and trumpets coming up off of their back like wings. It's based on another spire, an unblinking spire, and there's all these hands kind of reaching up to either maybe they're lifting the martyr up or they're grabbing them and pull them down into servitude. But regardless, the purpose of this shrine is to send out the divine frequencies or to blare the horns of salvation and call martyrs here. In my setting, I imagine when this shrine is activated, it sort of winter soldiers the martyrs and they kind of go into this like trance-like state. That's how I started my campaign. The players all arrived in Area 1 that we talked about and kind of coming out of this daze. I said the past few days or weeks or even months, there's this haze that they were in as they trekked through the arc until they arrived here. But it also could just be in a more like fantasy world, like it just literally blares a horn so loud that anybody within several miles can hear it, and everybody knows, oh crap, like the Crypt Maidens have sounded the horn. That's not good. We need heroes to get there immediately, and that's what conjures or calls heroes here. And I also was thinking, it can't just be like, well, just blow a horn and it's that easy. I'm thinking some sort of zealous worshiper needs to maybe give their last breath, their dying breath to this shrine in order to call heroes here and save everybody else. I think that's what makes it feel grimdarky and like a sacrifice instead of just a normal horn. And we have arrived in the final chamber, the hero Incubator. You can see there's this sort of Iron Maiden-like shrine with a little skeletal hero inside of it, guarded by these sentinel angels. And what this room is involves the harvested organs that I told you to remember, because the Crypt Maidens have been collecting blood and brains and hearts and all that kind of stuff. If a martyr is slain, and they are one that needs to be brought back to life, then you can take a piece of their DNA, like a severed arm or an eyeball or something, a strand of hair even, place it inside this incubator along with all of the harvested organs, maybe enough to make another human or something from Area 4, and over the period of several, depending on maybe what is left of the hero you're trying to replicate, over several minutes, hours, days, or even weeks, you can clone that martyr, bring them back to full life and strength. And this is something that I think if my characters uncover this room, if they make their way through the vault, they find the key, wherever that's at, I'm not even quite sure yet, then maybe I'll say there's only enough organs left in the organ sanctum to use this once. And if they ever want to use it again, if they ever want to replicate or heal, bring one of their fallen comrades back, they're going to have to go harvest those organs themselves somehow, or find a cult that is so zealous towards worshiping this one hero they're willing to give their own organs to do so. So very dramatic and very cool. And of course, you can maybe fight these angels or something. Who knows? And that's it. That is the 8-room dungeon I prepped. Like I said, on Patreon, there's the notes for that. There's the map. There's a blank version and one numbered and one with all the terrain. All of those terrain assets that I was showing off are also available as individual PNGs, so you can build the map however you want or use them to expand the dungeon and add new chambers and things. And I've got these 2 Kitbash Digi Minis that I kitbashed these using some sculpts from, I believe it was Vivictus and Knucklebone Minis with, of course, some GW bits thrown in there. But then I took a picture and cropped it out and did some color correction, and now you can use these in your VTT, like actual digital minis, or I also have some just circular pawn versions as well, if that's what you prefer. But all of that is on the church's Patreon for $3 a month, so you can go snag that and run your own adventures in the Ark if you would like. But thank you for watching. If you've got questions or ideas about this dungeon, please, of course, leave them in the comments. I would love to see what you guys think would be fun for this, and I'll be in there answering any questions you've got. But we say these things in their unholy names. Amen.